Well, this just into CNN. The UAE Ambassador to Washington, Yusuf Al-Attaiba, says that they are in favor of an oil production increase and will be encouraging OPEC to consider higher output. Earlier, Goldman Sachs saying the world may be facing one of the largest energy supply shocks ever. Well, let's take a look at where oil stands at present. 121 on Brent crude, 117 on the WTI. These numbers are down from the $139 on the barrel yesterday. That number, of course, the highest since the 2008 global financial crisis. And these swings set in motion after President Biden announced a ban on all Russian energy imports, now turning to other oil-producing powerhouses to pad global supply. Well, Amena Bakr is the chief OPEC correspondent and the deputy Dubai bureau chief at Energy Intelligence. She joins me now from the CNN Dubai bureau. We just got that line from the UAE ambassador to Washington, and this will very much feed into the debate about whether America's Gulf allies are prepared to, let's call it, help out at this point with these prices as high as they were. Your thoughts?
Well, Becky, so far we haven't been hearing anything official from the UAE Energy Ministry or the Saudi Energy Ministry on that matter. In fact, for the time being, they are sticking to the current OPEC Plus policy, which is keeping the 400,000 barrel increments. Now, of course, by the end of the month, OPEC Plus is supposed to meet again. They're probably going to reassess the market fundamentals. And clearly, I mean, just over the past couple of weeks, we are seeing a lot of drops happening in Russia's exports. About 2/3 of Russia's exports are impacted, perhaps by self-sanctioning or by the direct sanctions that have been imposed. So that's something that's going to be reviewed by the group. But for the time being, I can say that there isn't a move to call for an extraordinary OPEC meeting.
Let's just explore exactly what's going on here. You were just there talking about, you know, a disruption in the fundamentals. So we are beginning to see a disruption to the supply of Russian oil. Let's just explain why that is important, how things have changed, for example, since the last OPEC meeting, and how that could change things going forward.
Sure. I mean, first of all, you've just mentioned that the U.S. We've seen that the U.S. already pressed sanctions on oil. It doesn't impact the U.S. that much because the U.S. only imported around 200,000 barrels of Russian crude in 2021. So its impact on the U.S. is limited. However, we're seeing companies in Europe, refineries, start the self-sanctioning process, which is impacting Russian exports, and that, of course, is creating a deficit in the market. Now, overall, I can tell you that if Europe presses the same kind of sanctions that the U.S. has, that'll create a gap of about 4.3 million barrels. And that's something that OPEC Plus can't fill. I've mentioned before that OPEC Plus currently has spare capacity of up to 2.5 million barrels. So there's a gap there. And with no extra supply to fill that gap, we might see oil prices rising perhaps to $200.
That extra capacity, of course, is from the Saudis, who take a lead with the Russians in this OPEC Plus grouping, and, of course, the UAE. You've been talking about fundamentals, and we're considering that there may be a change to those, and therefore that would provide an argument for raising output. There's also a second argument, isn't there? There is the fact that the UAE and the Saudis would consider themselves, and have done for many years now, as allies of the West. And so there must be a consideration at present about what they might do, whether that is inside the OPEC Plus group, which of course includes Russia, or whether they may just provide some support for this market unilaterally at this point. Is that an option?
You're talking about unilateral action, Becky, and yeah, of course, that was something that was asked very early on to these two producers that hold the spare capacity. Why don't they take unilateral action? And the reasoning behind that is that they want to keep unity within this group, and they don't want Russia to step out or leave the OPEC Plus group. This would be a big loss to these Gulf producers. They would be losing. I can tell you that, I mean, OPEC Plus is a very effective market managing tool. And without the weight of Russia in the group, it would be less effective. We saw in April 2020, Saudi Arabia announced a free-for-all production, and that was just to get Russia to sit back onto the negotiating table. Today, we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing no action to keep Russia inside the OPEC Plus group. So that's a factor that's being considered to unity within the group.
What would happen if OPEC Plus fell apart at this point?
Well, you're going to get volatility that we're seeing in other commodities, like the gas markets, like in the metal markets. The rise in oil prices was limited compared to all these other commodities because of market management. And this is something that the group's members always mention, that perhaps the gas market needs another market managing tool to contain these sharp movements in prices. So if we don't have an OPEC Plus, I suspect that we're going to have a lot more volatility in this commodity.
For market management, of course, some will read collusion, correct?
Yes, that's another way to look at it.
Going forward, we've seen the US take a position which is no more Russian oil, gas or coal immediately, with immediate effect. The Europeans, not so fast, particularly the Germans, and we know there has been a disconnect among what is otherwise a relatively unified bloc of Europe. But when it comes to energy, this is a real issue, isn't it? And let's just remind our viewers why.
This war has a huge component related to energy security. 45% of gas that Europe needs comes from Russia. So having these European states being hesitant about cutting off supplies from Russia, I mean, they have every right to be hesitant because they understand the impact that it's going to have on their people and their economies, etc. So, but however, we did see a plan, and at this point it's just a plan. The EU said that they do plan to phase out their dependence on Russian gas by the end of this year, or a large portion of it. But details of what that entails, they mentioned more renewables, other sources, efficiency, etc. But that really remains to be seen, and we need to see how that plays out. But for the time being, Becky, I don't think the Europeans are going to jump into sanctioning energy like the US did, because they're a lot more dependent on Russian energy supplies.
With that, we're going to leave it there. We thank you very much indeed for joining us. An extremely important conversation with Amena Bakr, whose analysis and insight is just terrifically important for us at this point. Thank you.